She is currently Wayne State University's Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs. She has been at Wayne State University since 2002. Prior to being appointed to her current position, Dr. Winters held several administrative positions, including Associate Provost for Academic Personnel and Founding Chair of the Department of Classical and Modern Languages, Literatures, and Cultures. Dr. Winters is a professor of French and Linguistics in the Department of Classical and Modern Languages, Literatures, and Cultures. She has published in a variety of scholarly journals in North America and Europe, and also has published 2 editions of Old French courtly romances. A native in New York City, she attended Brooklyn College. She spent a year in France after receiving her BA and subsequently did graduate work at the University of California, Riverside and the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Winters is the Vice President of the Board of the Sholem Aleichem Institute, a Yiddish-based group in the Detroit area, and a member of the Board of the Cohen-Haddo Center for Judaic Studies. Again, I am honored to introduce Dr. Margaret Winters as tonight's keynote speaker.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good evening. Good Yontif. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And thank you to Shalom Wayne, to Hillel, for making this possible, and the Chabad. I've been listening. Some of you may have satellite radio in your cars. You may or may not know that satellite radio at this time of year, and I mean Hanukkah, it doesn't matter when exactly the time of year is for us, there is something called Radio Hanukkah, which is on for 8 days and 8 nights, and sometimes a little extra at the end if they don't switch over immediately. It's a wild combination. There is religious music, there is secular Hanukkah music, there are short, usually very interesting reflections about the meaning of Hanukkah. And then they find anything else they can think of that might be vaguely related. So you get Jackie Mason, you get Matas Yahu, and I'll get back to that in a minute. You get lots of other Israeli pop music, other liturgical music. And we tend to overdose on it since it's only for 8 days. Whenever we're in the car, we listen to Radio Hanukkah. What it has done for me this year, I knew I was coming to speak, and I actually listened to some of it in a different way while I was thinking about being out here tonight. And I've been sorting through images, thoughts about Hanukkah, about being Jewish in the United States, which Mrs. Finman spoke about. Let me try a couple of things, of ways in which to think about it. First of all, of course, is the religious idea. And we have the miracle of the oil, which has been spoken about already. There's a historical and political side to it. The underdog, the Maccabees, standing up against the Assyrian Greeks and winning. One of the early, anyway for me, I'm not this kind of historian, but a very early example of successful guerrilla warfare against a very powerful army. And then there's the cultural side. And that's probably the one that interests me and maybe many of you at least as much as anything else. It's a joyous celebration. A lot of it in the United States, at least, is for children. And there are children here tonight. There is the fact that you get a gift every night. And it may be as small, I mean, when I was growing up, it could have been a pencil, a small pad, if you were lucky, something like a kaleidoscope. My parents knew the 5 and dime merchandise really well. And then one big gift at the end. It's fun, it's joyous, you celebrate. Whether or not you actually dance in a circle in the kitchen is optional, but I'm very glad you sang the Yiddish song. It may or may not, there was a piece in the Forbes just this week or last week about with a new book which explores the idea that we make so much of the gifts and of Hanukkah because it's an antidote to being in what's still largely a Christian society. I leave that up in the air, but the book apparently has arguments in both directions as to whether this is a good or a bad thing. And another thing, note that these songs were in Hebrew, in English, in Yiddish. There could have been songs in Ladino as well. Probably most of you have listened to any Hanukkah music in the last few years know Otros Candelicas, the Ladino 8 candle song. It's a mixture of religious, secular, serious in some ways, and I will get back to that, and joyous to children and adults. And not just in the United States. We were in Israel one year for Hanukkah, which is where I learned about the jelly donuts for the first time. Since I come from a strict
Safghani
culture instead of
Safghani.
But all of these themes, and you use the word resolve, I have the word perseverance down. With thinking alike. No consultation, but thinking alike. The perseverance of the oil that lasted. I mean, that's a religious miracle, a metaphor, if you want, for perseverance. Also, the perseverance of the Maccabees. Certainly also steadfast, goal-oriented, to use a modern expression. And the establishment, I bring it to the establishment of Jewish identity. And this was where the Provost article talked about, if you want the positive side of, yes, we give gifts, yes, we light lights, we lit lights possibly long before Christmas lights. It's not just competition or distraction of children, but it's also identifying ourselves as Jews in the United States and Europe and other places where Hanukkah is celebrated. Public schools have become more enlightened than certainly they were when I was in school. So that we were at Thanksgiving dinner the other night with a little girl who is some form of Christian, I guess. She knew all about dreidels. And she had indeed made several dreidels out of Tinker Toy. And they worked. We spent some time at the table with them. So there is, in this, we are the ones who light a candle like this, a candelabra like this. We give gifts for 8 nights. We have special foods which are different, but there is a convergence. There is goes back to what you were saying again, a chance for people to understand each other better and be open to each other's holidays. So I would suggest that we want to celebrate all of this, as many layers as we can, in as many ways as we know for Hanukkah, and not forget that the layers coexist, the religious, the historical, the cultural, the sheer joy of it. So with that, I'll say again, Freiliche Hanukkah, Happy Hanukkah, Chag Sameach, and thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you.